All right, everybody, welcome. It is a new year. How great is that? We officially have gone from 2020 to 2021. I can honestly say I don't know how different it is. However, I can tell you that vaccines are going in arms, and I hope that some of the arms who are on this show have gotten their vaccine, right? It does actually help to change your outlook on life as it gets closer. And the biggest news of the new year is my son officially became a citizen of Israel. Mazel tov to me and to him. Tonight, I have to say, we have a prolific comedy writer. And Robert, I thought about this a little too late. I probably thought about this at 7:55. I should have called you up and said, hey, I need some opening jokes. But okay, we'll save them. You can do it because for those of you who do not know Robert Wuhl is, a Hollywood legend in all of our minds. We're going to keep it that way. He's had roles in movies like Flashdance and Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams and Bull Durham with Kevin Costner and Blaze with Paul Newman, Batman as reporter Alexander Knox, Blue Chips with Nick Nolte, Cobb with Tommy Lee Jones. He's also an incredible writer, right? He's received 2 Emmys for writing the Academy Awards telecast hosted by Billy Crystal, which, by the way, I know tonight's a sports show, but I got to hear those stories because I love you both. And Billy Crystal's shows, I think, were among the best. And as a comedian, he starred in HBO's comedy hour titled Robert Wuhl's World Tour. Now, you might be wondering, because this is a sports show, why are we having Robert Wuhl? Did anyone ask that? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people must have asked that and decided to come anyway. But maybe that's because you knew probably one of his most distinctive, probably tour de force shows, which was Arliss. Back in the day on HBO, it was for 7 seasons, and it was a satire of the world of professional sports. Every year, it grew more and more popular, and it was this really interesting mix between comedy and dramatic social commentary, probably before its time, but really, really wonderful. And I think that put Robert every day in the world that I think he loves most, he's going to tell us now, is the world of sports. And Robert and I were talking, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and he wanted to talk about sports. And I said, you know what, why don't we come on and talk about sports, right? Arnie and I love to talk about sports. Let's bring on Robert to do it. So I don't usually ask you the first question, Robert. I just get to introduce you because that's such a pleasure for me. Arnie, I'm going to turn it to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. And I echo Donna's comments. I hope everybody's doing well and that vaccines are coming to your area soon and that we can get back to some sense of normalcy. Robert, it's an honor to have you on the show. This is the 10th month that we've been doing this show. I think we've probably done close to 25 shows now, and it's truly wonderful to have you. And we have a lot of questions to ask you about sports, and I know your love of sports and especially baseball, so we'll get into that. But I'm going to start out with just a softball, okay? And that is you grew up in New Jersey. Tell us about going to school in Houston. Why Houston? And also tell us a little bit about your family. My father was a produce distributor as well, so we have that in common. I thought that was really cool. And tell us a little bit about your family upbringing and maybe your Judaism as it involved your own family.
Arnie, you just asked him his whole life in one question.
I'm not Jewish.
Go ahead, dig it up.
By the way, it's funny you say that about this because I've been since COVID, I'm here with my wife in the house basically the 2 of us. That's about it. And she's she's a shiksa, so this to me is like mishpucha night. So it's kind of nice. It really is to see everybody here. She's not funny. I grew up in New Jersey, Union, New Jersey. My father the family business was a produce business. They were wholesalers, distributors between, say, Sunkist and whatever, Ralph's, or distribute between the stores. They were the middleman in that kind of thing. And it was a very successful business. It started with my grandparents, and it was very successful. It's still around to this day. We're not involved anymore, but Wuhl Brothers is still involved in this day. Very successful, but for a young age, I didn't want any part of it. I mean, I pretty much knew what I wanted to do. I like storytelling, and I like story watching, and I like funny people, and I enjoyed stories a lot. so that was that. And you asked me, how did I get to Houston? They accepted me. True story. That's it. I mean, I was, I was not a great student. I was just, I was not a great
I don't
student.
know why that makes me laugh, but okay.
No, I wasn't. I was probably the only Jew in about 1970 who was rejected from the University of Miami. Okay, I couldn't even get in there. I mean, so so I see Houston. My buddy says, "Hey, it's $10 to apply to Houston." I knew Houston from, where did I know Houston from? Because the year before, Elvin Hayes had beaten Lou Alcindor in the famous Houston UCLA basketball game. So I said, that's a big school. I knew they had a football program, and it had a Major League Baseball team. So, in the Astrodome, which was very hip back then. So I applied there. They let me in, and I had a great time there. I joked that I crammed 4 years into 7, which I did. Which I did. And my freshman year, because I put down Jewish on the form, they of course paired me with another Jewish freshman. He was an art major by the name of Julian Schnabel.
No way.
Yeah, Julian was my roommate.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The Julian's a piece of work. But yeah, I had a great time in Houston, but then it was time to go. It was 7 years is a long time. I had a great time there.
Well, okay, so I just want to remind everybody here, and Robert knows it is a family conversation. When we come together on Tuesday nights, everybody has an opportunity to ask questions. So put them in the chat. We'll get to them. Brendan, I have to ask you this question. Have you even heard of Arliss, the show?
No, but my parents have.
Your parents have. Well, it's really funny. If there's a reason to do a remake, Robert, it's because you realize, you don't really think you get older until there's a whole other generation that has never heard of one of like the defining series, right? Let's talk a little bit about Arliss and its relevance to the sports world, right? When you were doing it, it was edgy.
Yeah, well,
as you look back, what is to today's world, which is, I think we live in an edgy sports world still. Are you surprised by how relevant some of those episodes were?
I think we're relevant then. I always believed, we had discussions about this because we got much more socially, it was always a comedy. It had to be funny. It had to be entertaining. Now, entertaining can mean a lot of things. You can cry and be entertained. So, but I wanted to have stories, where I could deal with, what happened in real life. Shows are about characters. Stories are about characters. Dickens is about character. The best books you ever read are about characters. It's about behavior. And I wanted to, now I knew, because I had a family business, I came from a family, I knew how a business was run. Because to me, this was a guy running a business. He just had a very unique clientele, which was sports, professional sports, and no one had done anything at this time about it. I wanted to talk about, what do you do with one of your clients who makes you a lot of money and helps pay the rent, is a basketball player who's notorious for impregnating a lot of women. And this was based on a story in one of the magazines. And I would talk to other agents and I say, what do you do with a girl? This guy's got, 6 or 7 or 10 kids out there, and he knocks up another woman. And I said, what do you do? He goes, well, it's about this. If she has the kid, it's going to be millions of dollars. If she doesn't, it'll be 100,000, 150 maybe. He goes, so that's the decision. And it's the agent's job to kind of talk him into it. And I thought, oh, that's great. Let's give it to Sandra. Yeah, I was very lucky too, because I had picked a young actress that no one ever heard of at the time, called Sandra Oh, to be, my assistant on the show. So I was quite, that was good.
And she won I think she won an Oscar or an Emmy recently, or a Golden Globe. She won some really big award recently.
Sandra's a good actress.
Yeah, really good, really good.
Well, I liked it. I like doing about gay athletes, about domestic abuse, about transgender athletes, steroid abuse. But I had to do it in an entertaining show. And you have to service your characters. And you have to tell a story. Alzheimer's. Ed Asner played a played a character sort of based on, there was a lot of old time baseball announcers who were getting to an age at that time where one guy was going blind, another one, so I had my father-in-law had Alzheimer's, so I knew that one. So Ed Asner played like the longtime announcer of the Los Angeles Dodgers who has Alzheimer's. And it's Arliss' client and how you dealt with that. So when it comes to those kind of decisions, I liked it a lot. Because it was never about the big game. That's the reason most sports movies and stories suck. It's about the big game. Who's
About the big game, I see.
Game? Think of the best sports pictures. Bull Durham isn't about anybody winning a big game. The Bang the Drum Slowly isn't about anybody winning a big game.
Right.
Raging Bull.
All right, so hold on. Here's a quiz. Let's see if anyone knows it. The #1 most popular sports movie to this day. By the way, this was on my call earlier today, Robert, I told you about. I was surprised. I didn't expect it to be this. Does anybody know? You can put it in the chat. I'll give you a minute. It's not The Sandlot. Good guess. It's not Hoosiers. It's not Rocky. It's not Rudy. It's not A League of Their Own. It's not. These are all really great movies. The biggest grossing, the most popular. Now I'm just gonna. Field of Dreams. Somebody's probably.
How about Brian's song, Donna?
Oh, good. That's another one. Hi, Ami. How are you? Creed.
Again,
I watched that. I know it's on me.
not a big game.
I've seen every single one of these. Which one do you think it is? Okay, I'm going to tell you. This is what I was told today by a Hollywood agent today. The Brian Schiff story to be made. Ready for this? It is Blindside. The Blindside.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Right?
I'll buy that.
Also not about the big game, by the way.
About
Anyway, Artie, you have a question for Robert?
Yeah, well, let's definitely stay on Arliss. Robert, HBO obviously did and owned the series. Did you ever feel any pushback either from HBO or did you hear that HBO maybe from any of the leagues had any pushback? Now, they didn't own the rights, I know, television-wise, so that may have helped. But was there any negativity on dealing with some of these societal issues?
Actually, never, because HBO had no contracts, like you said, with any of the sports. They had so they didn't have to worry about a pushback. Never. The only thing I ever got pushback about was probably me pushing too much sex or nudity or stuff like that. Just Robert, bring it back a little bit. So it's like Tommy Lasorda, who we just lost. He was on the show as a guest occasionally, and he said, "I'm in Dodger Stadium in the owner's box, Frank McCourt at that time, and Tommy's sitting next to me. He goes, Robert, how many years did that show of yours run?" And I said, "We did 80 episodes, 7 seasons." He says, "I'll tell you what was wrong with your show." Okay, it was the language. Did you have to use that kind of language? And I said, "Well, we had freedom on HBO." He goes, "I don't give a fuck." Had no idea what he said. None. Everybody in the box exploded in laughter. But that was true. I mean, HBO, I was going to take advantage. I absolutely was going to take advantage of all this opportunity. And when you're in the writer's room, they say, "Well, who's the voice of conscience?" And I said, "Nobody." I said, I'm sorry. It's like in real life, everybody is duplicitous. So, you can have moral up and figure out the story, but I don't want any, I don't buy that because that's not real life.
So Jay wants to, I thought this is a really good first question. There's a lot of really good questions here. Was the character in Arliss based on Arn Tellem?
The AR in Arliss came from Arn Tellem. I like the name because I wanted to have a unique name, and because it was Lee Steinberg and Arn Tellem. And by the way, it's not all sports agents that I based it on. To me, it was a guy running a business.
Right.
And I was also basing it on talent agents, real estate agents, any kind of agent. An agent by nature is a parasitic commodity. I mean, somebody else does something. Now you're providing a service, but still you're getting a percentage of that service. So that kind of business trumps all. But Arn Tellem was one of the first people we did. And when I wrote the name Arn, and then there was an actor named Arliss Howard, and there was another actor named George Arliss. And when I wrote it down, I noticed in the S's, I could put $signs through the 2 S's at the end. And I said, that works.
Oh, pretty cool. So was it hard to get athletes to appear? Somebody who asked that?
Only
Shifty asked that one. because this was before the time when every athlete now, for those of you who don't know, have their own production company, right? Everyone's got a studio, they've got their own production company. I remember when I started working for the PGA Tour, we started PGA Tour Productions. I mean, for athletes to talk to us, it was like, who are you? We don't talk.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, was it difficult?
Only in the very big, see, we only wanted to use one or two for texture. I mean, you never let the athletes carry the story. That's craziness. They're not actors. It's like they were there for texture with rare exceptions, because I had a relationship with Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and David Wells and some guys. I could push them further and they were into it. But in the beginning, people had to the first guy who jumped on board was Jerry Jones. So I'm forever grateful.
Okay, now that's not surprising, right? Jerry Jones would jump into a trash can.
At this, by the way, back in 90, when do we start? 96, 97, Jerry is not everywhere in the world yet, you know? So it was, and then we had Scottie Pippen jumped in, but then very quickly, as Glenn Fry used to say, being an athlete on your show is comparable to being a rock band on Saturday Night Live to that world. He said, everybody wants to get on. And basically more than ever, it was always about scheduling, who was available in LA at that time. It was certain sports, golf. We very rarely had ever golfers because they're always on the tour somewhere. And our shooting schedule is basically between March and July. Well, forget, it's like, I don't know how many golfers we ever had. We had not too many. We had women golfers. We had the female guy. I did a show about an alcoholic female client who stopped drinking and she started losing. And
I don't know.
well, no, this was based on. This wasn't played for laughs, by the way. This was. She was dropping.
I hear you.
She became an alcoholic and she hadn't won in a couple. She got clean. She hadn't won in a couple of years. And this is based on a lot of comics I know who were not as funny when they were straight. And they sobered up and they weren't funny anymore. Richard Pryor would be the first. He was much funnier when he was fucked up. So, and that does happen. So I thought that was a really good, it was a way about competing, about competitors and how they think and how they would all take any advantage they can get. And they do. And they always will, and they always will.
Hey, Robert, let's, I know we have a clip we want to show, so this will lead us into it, but a couple of the athletes that appeared on your show were in the news, obviously today with Kobe and the anniversary, but also Barry Bonds and the Hall of Fame. So why don't we watch the Kobe clip, and then I'd love for you to comment on those two athletes and any others that you'd like to.
Let me set this up just for a second, though. Kobe had just signed. This is his first TV appearance. Kobe, at this point, I think is 17 years old, and he has just signed his Laker contract, like $40 million, whatever it was. So this was the first thing he shot, because we had friends over with the Lakers, and they wanted to expose him, too. And I knew that he had grown up in Italy. So I thought it'd be a funny way to cameo to see this guy that nobody knows. I thought it'd be funny to see him speaking Italian. So this is the way that's where this clip goes.
As for myself, I maintained a low profile, working diligently behind the scenes, strategizing my next move.
Hey, Arliss, man. Thanks for hooking me up with the Summer League. It's a great chance for me to know LA.
Oh, my pleasure, Kobe. Kobe, help me out. How do you say my client wants to renegotiate in Italian?
Mio cliente vuole rinegoziare.
Mio cliente vuole rinegoziate. It's very romantic.
Say, Arliss.
Oh, that is so cool. What a great clip, you guys.
But thank you. And also, the amazing thing is, as we're doing this and we're shooting it, it takes a couple of hours. I'm noticing this woman standing over to the side, hovering around, and I don't know who she is. And I went to my producer, who's this woman? He goes, oh, that's Kobe's social worker. She has to be here. He's underage. I go, he just signed a $44 million contract. How do I get a social worker like this? So that's true. And look at what a kid he was. I mean, he's a kid there. He was great. Kobe was great to the show, always great for us.
That's amazing. 17, right?
I think so. He had to be underage.
Right? Totally. And what about Barry?
Oh, Bonds?
Yeah.
Bonds and I have always gotten along. We met years ago in Miami at a joint venture between Comic Relief and the Major League Players Association. They were putting on this event down there, and I became friendly. And Barry was there, and Roger, and BJ Surhoff, Barry Larkin. So I became friendly with a bunch of these guys who were playing in a golf tournament. So when we did the initial campaign for Arliss, Barry was part of the national campaign. So Barry and I became friendly. Roger and I became quite good friends. I mean, when he was still in Boston when I first met him. I mean, I think I met him in '97. So we've kept in touch, as I do keep in touch with Barry too.
Okay, here's the Barry clip.
My name is Arliss Michaels. I represent the biggest names in sports.
Thanks for the tickets. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, John McEnroe. But I also have the utmost respect for owners. So once one of my players signs a contract, I ask him to sacrifice all for the good of the team. Arliss Michaels.
Hey, Arliss, tell him I'm not going home unless I get that 3-year guaranteed extension.
Read at the top.
Let the games begin. Arliss, new on HBO.
Adorable.
No, I didn't write that. That was one of the first promos. I mean,
okay, that's really cool. Hey, let me ask you this, because we didn't really establish this. Have you always been a big sports fan? Because I know that you're a huge sports fan now. But were you always?
Yeah, I always liked sports. My dad was an athlete. He was a pretty good athlete. He had a tryout for the great Newark Bears teams in the which were the Yankees AAA team. So my dad was a good athlete. And I got into I watched sports there with him a lot. I guess it was a bonding with him, but I really like the game within the game. I like how things work. Like what's going on, like the game, like I said, the game within the game. Hearing the stories that how did this happen, and it's not such and I just really like that. I'm not all sports, by the way. I like football. I'm not as big a basketball fan as I used to be.
Why is that? Why is that? What happened?
I don't, the style of the game, I find kind of dull. I just, it's all pick and roll and let out, throw a shot. It's just lost me a little bit. Now at its best, these are the greatest athletes in the world, by the way. Nobody's a better athlete than professional basketball players. Nobody. But it's just the pro game a little bit. The college game I enjoy sometimes. The college game I enjoy. My Houston team's doing well right now.
Yes, it is. That's true. That is true.
Robert, how'd you become such a big baseball fan? Where did you play as a youth?
I played intramurals mostly. I actually played more ball when I got to Hollywood. I started playing, but I played a lot of intramural softball, a lot of softball, and I just we had a great team in college, intramural team with good players, and I've always been a student of the game, and I just love baseball. They keep trying to destroy it, and by doing nothing, sometimes they do destroy it, outrun it. But I just love the chess match between the pitcher and the batter, and I mean, plus they're normal sized people. Baseball players, for the most part, normal sized people. Basketball, they're giants. Football, they're monsters. Hockey players are more real, but baseball players, for the most part, are normal size.
You can turn this down if you're watching here.
So I like that. People can do that, and it's a more game. It's not as much a specialist game. It's more of a generalist game. You have to be able to hit, run, catch, field, throw. You can do some better than others, but you can't do one skill.
Why, your camera's off?
We got to mute. Somebody is not on mute.
It looks like Bruce Apple, Danny. I don't know if you can mute his phone.
Hey, Robert, you had two great baseball movies, Cobb and Bull Durham. Can you talk a little bit about those? And I'm just kind of curious as a baseball fan. And you were obviously on the field, and was it fun? It had to be a ball being in movies like that, right?
It was great fun. It was great. Bull Durham, I went to an audition, and I gave what the director Ron Shelton said was, I was all over the place. And Ron Shelton, the director, said, "That's the worst audition I've ever seen. Hire him immediately." and the casting director couldn't figure out why. And and Ron said, he's going to bring something to this picture that no one else in this picture has. He's my Greek chorus. I can cut away to him, and it worked out great. We had a great relationship, and then we talked about doing the Ty Cobb story, which we both loved. We knew the baseball piece that it was based on, and when Bull Durham becomes a big hit movie, Ron, true to his word, does the Ty Cobb movie, and he hires me.
Yeah, Shelton was great, and he did a lot of work with Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they became like a duo. So here's Adam Formal's question, a good one. Were there any sports topics you proposed for Arliss that were too controversial at the time?
Never. I mean, I could, domestic abuse, Alzheimer's. And this is Charlie Steiner right here, so I have to leave him a message here. I'm sure he's going to talk. We're going to talk about Larry King. No, because we did everything. I mean, unwed, talking a woman into getting an abortion. I mean, Jesus, because it's part of your job. The storyline was Rita wanted the promotion, and Arliss was off having an affair with Katerina Witt. It's good to be the king, and so he left the job with Rita, saying, "You want to be an agent? Okay, go make your bones." And he had to talk this, poor farm girl into an abortion. So I mean, that's pretty, tough stuff. I had one where a breast cancer, where I meet an old flame of mine, and we're having sex, and she needs to tell me, she wants to tell me something. I don't listen to her, and as I'm making my way down, I realize you don't see it. That she hasn't told me about the mastectomy. So I mean, because my mother died of breast cancer. So I didn't have any problems with anything. I can't think of anything. We did race stuff. We did about a black quarterback, gay gay baseball player. We had Billy Dean on part of the episode. No, I never got I can't ever remember ever having a topic. There might be a topic we couldn't crack. That might be something. We had one with lesbian couple wants going to have a baby, and they want Arliss to be the sperm donor. And Arliss says he'll do it if they let him name the baby. And what he does is he sells the naming rights, which was a big thing selling, and he sells it to he sells it to Marlboro. That's what it was, because you couldn't advertise. You can't advertise on TV. So by selling Marlboro, I mean, if you got the world's greatest tennis player and their kid is Marlboro, well, you've just sold the naming rights. So I enjoyed that one. There were a lot of shows. We did a lot of different topics. I like the topics. It gave it some weight, some heftiness. It gave it a reality that made you a little uncomfortable, but I found would draw you in. But it had to be about characters. It was about characters.
I think in a lot of ways you were way ahead of the times. I
keep hearing that. I keep hearing that. It must, now that Arliss is on HBO Max, everybody's talking about how the show is ahead of its time, and I keep saying, I would rather be of my time and have Seinfeld money. I'd much rather.
What about? I know you get asked this a lot, but what about bringing the show back? And
again, this is an HBO. This has been in progress for a while. This is an HBO decision. HBO does not give anything back, any kind of IP back. But and we've had a bunch of people offer, and it's not 100% dead yet. No, I wouldn't say it's 100% dead yet, but it's difficult. I mean, it's and also the show would have to be younger. It has to be much younger now. So and things change a little bit, but human behavior never changes. It's the great quote I always love was the one by Aldous Huxley, who said, the charm of history lies in the fact that from generation to generation, nothing changes, and yet everything is completely different. I love that. I think that's so true. Most things are generational.
It is interesting. So I saw some data today, Robert, about why ratings in watching sports. I don't know how everybody would evaluate their own viewing habits for sports, but by and large, viewing is down during the pandemic. Pandemic viewing is down. Lots of different reasons. Some of it attributed to the fact that people are watching more. They like the social commentary, the social justice activation taken by athlete and leagues. And there are just as many people who are not watching sports because they don't appreciate that, because sports is supposed to be their escape. So that seems like a good Arliss topic. What do you think about that?
Oh, we did shows about that. We had a show about a tennis player, I remember, who was very charitable guy. I mean, he was, very much passionate about stuff. And what we didn't know at the time is that one of his buddies gets blown up in a suicide bombing, and that he's been funneling him the money. And because we got into the question of one man's terrorism is another man's freedom fighter. So, which I liked. I liked that idea, because I did, whenever I can find something where I can argue both sides, I guess it's it's the contrarian in me that, so we got into that issue, and then it can't come out from from a commercial point of view. Arliss, the agent, doesn't want this coming out, but we find it out, and the guy makes his point. And the question, so what do you do? I mean, what do you do? What can you do? I mean, the guy is bringing in, and he's a good guy. He's a great guy, but he's funneling money. He's giving money to his cause. He goes a lot of causes, but this one happens to be what some would call a terrorist organization, for the Basques. But it was it was a play center for anything. I love that. I love getting into that. Anytime I can argue both sides, it's the old Knesset joke, there's 7 people at the Knesset, you get 8 opinions. So I love that.
Arn?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to something Donna referenced at the beginning, and that is the work that you did with Billy Crystal. I thought that was fascinating. You won Emmy Awards for writing for the Academy. That we could see him in the background. Just that had to be an incredible experience. What was it like, and how much input did Billy have, as part of the writing? I assume a fair amount.
No, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
How much input do I have into the writing, not Billy? It's the other way around. And people think, no, if you're the star, people don't say no to stars too often. Now, what had happened was, Carl Reiner and I shared a manager, and Carl's wife, Estelle, was a good cabaret artist. She was a really good singer and a good cabaret artist. So she was performing at this local club, and Carl wanted a comedian to be an opening act. So he asked George who he had, and George suggested me. He looked at my tape and said, yeah. So it wasn't like I was really thrilled, as a how was I old then? As a 35-year-old stand-up comic to be opening for Estelle Reiner, as a career object, to be perfectly honest. But I did like her a lot, and she was very good. But you get into this small cabaret room, which sat maybe 80, and I go out there the first night, and the audience is Mel Brooks, Anne Bancroft, Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest, Jamie Lee Curtis, Larry Gelbart. I mean, it's who's who time of comedy. And I did pretty well. I did fine in my job. I had a good time. And about a month or 2 later, I get a call from David Steinberg, not the comic. David Steinberg is Billy's manager. And he says, Billy's going to host the Grammys for the first time. Would you want to work on it with him? And I said, sure. So we started working together then. He hosted the Grammys for a couple of years, and then he got the Oscars. And what's amazing is it was only the 2 of us on the writing staff for Billy. Now, they had other writers, but they were there to write the patter, the host, not the host stuff, everybody else's, or if somebody's giving a speech. And by the way, the first year there, the writing staff, if you're a film buff at all, and I am, the writing staff of the other people were Sheila Benson, who was a great film critic from the LA Times. Then it was Ernst Lehman, who was one of the great all-time screenwriters, who wrote West Side Story. He wrote The Sound of Music. He wrote Somebody Up There Likes Me. He wrote The King and I. He did the screenplay for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. He wrote North by Northwest. I mean, so he's writing these presenters patter, and I want to pick his brain and just hear the stories. And and then Melville Shavelson, who wrote a lot of Bob Hope movies, Seven Little Foys. I mean, so I'm in film nerd heaven. So, but Billy and I were the only two, with assist from David Steinberg, writing his stuff. The next year we added Bruce Valanche, who we adored, and then also added Mark Shaman, who Billy had worked with on Saturday Night Live, and that's when the song thing medley started that year. But it was great. I mean, here's what was great about it. Most of the work you do in show business, no one ever sees. No one ever sees. I mean, if you can even be on, unless you're on a hit show or in Batman or some big thing, most people never see it, including Arliss. I mean, including most of the work. The one thing nice about the Academy Awards was you knew your work was going to be seen, and the next day people were going to talk about it, and that was important to us. So that's the great thing about working on the Oscars. It's of the moment. It's like the Super Bowl. Of course, not anymore. This year's Oscars will be so low. It'll be the lowest rated by 25%.
Are there any even movies that have gotten nominated, right?
Well, there's nothing yet, but no one's seen any of the movies.
It's a challenging year. But listen, Kenny Fried asked this, as long as we're not talking about sports at the moment, because I want to go back into that. But I'm just as curious as Kenny Fried is on this one. Working with Robin Williams.
Robin was a dear friend. Robin, I first met when I was first starting out as a stand-up comic at the Improv in New York in 1976, 77. We had heard about this comic from the West Coast, Robin Williams.
You heard about it?
He could come in, and he could blow away rooms at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And sure enough, Robin comes into the Improv one night, and we had good comics at the Improv too. I mean, it was. I was there along with Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David and Paul Reiser and Keenan Ivory Waynes and Gilbert Gottfried. I mean, they were pretty good comics. And then Robin comes in, and it's a different type of force of nature and something you hadn't seen before. Or if you had, you'd seen it as a street. He combined brilliance of comedy with a street performer and even a touch of the old performers in the, street performers the best way, but even on a cruise ship, there was a touch of Robin who could play with the audience. I mean, he was unique. So, but we became friends. So Robin and I knew each other, and then he did Mork and Mindy, and I was almost hired on the staff of Mork and Mindy, but we would see each other, and we were friendly, and we'd do shows together. So when I got the script, and Robin loved seeing me there because it was somebody he knew. And Robin is so special. Robin was one of the great human beings of all time. Robin was great. Robin was so, we were comics during the early 80s. AIDS breaks out. And Robin's a San Francisco comic. And so there was a good percentage of San Francisco comics who got sick. And Robin, who at this time is a star, almost a superstar, unbeknownst to many people, Robin was paying all their bills. He was funneling money to them. Robin's very special, and Robin is missed.
What a great movie. So
yeah, no, and by the way, Robin had not had a hit movie up until then. None of his movies had really worked. But when I got the script, and Barry Levinson was the director, and he hired me because I had met with Barry on other projects. I had met to Barry years before to read on Diner, and I had met for him on other stuff. But so he hired me. When I read the script, I said, "This is a perfect vehicle for Robin Williams. This is going to work. This is going to work." It was a perfect vehicle. If you think of all the, because it's a good script, and then you have him on the air. And when he's on the air, he's doing his thing. It's almost like I keep comparing it to a musical. It's like when he's on the air, it becomes music. It becomes jazz. It becomes a production. It becomes Gene Kelly. It becomes anything. So these are the musical interludes, and they're brilliant. And he's great. And it worked. It did work.
Speaking of music, I saw something on your Twitter site on an interview you did recently involving your film Missing Pieces. and it talked about the relationship that you formed with Marvin Hamlish.
Marvin. Yeah,
Talk about that. I thought that was really interesting.
I met Marvin on, we were doing it. I did this movie Missing Pieces with Eric Idle, which I don't know if it was, I don't think it was ever released. But it was the old joke. This movie wasn't released; it escaped. But Marvin was hired to write a song for it was sort of a high hopes type thing for me and Eric Idle, and Marvin and I hit it off. We hit it off, and we had great, we shared a lot, and he knew my love of musicals, and he then scored a movie that I directed for me, and we were starting to work on another project. Marvin's so great. I mean, it was the most fun I had directing the movie was watching Marvin score the movie, and I'm in the control room watching him conduct the orchestra. It was the one time I didn't have to be in control. It was just like, yeah, let it go. He's doing it. Very special man. He is missed too.
Yeah, totally. And a Queens College graduate, I must add. Hey, Danny on our team, I think this is a great question, Danny. Robert, he wants to know, does your affinity for talking and writing about a wide variety of issues, you kind of picked that up so far, including controversial ones, have anything to do with your being raised in a Jewish family or with Jewish values?
Oh, that's a great question.
I thought so.
Well, I wasn't raised by any other family, so it's hard for me to compare. But I think there is something to having arguments and having debate and issues and stuff like that, expressing opinions. My wife, her family, they forget that. No, I like that. I also like the fact that not that politics ever came up I don't remember a political argument ever in my family about party politics. I never remember one. But my father, most of the time, and there was no idea, but most of the time he was Republican and my mother voted Democrat. My father owned a business. We had a family business. But then again, it was different back then. I have to explain that Republican back then meant Nelson Rockefeller, Jacob Javits, Lowell Weicker. There was a liberal wing of the Republican Party. That's forget that. So, and Old Man Romney. So there was, and my father ran a business. When I tell people a lot of times, especially out here, my wife and I always joke that my wife is to the left of Lenin. And then you got all the limousine liberal fans here in Hollywood. And I asked him, I go, how many of you ever had a family or a father that was personally responsible for 100 people receiving a paycheck every 2 weeks? I mean, that you didn't get a paycheck, you were responsible for making sure the business gave them one. And very few people do that. And they have to understand, there's different responsibilities. And I think that's something that people don't think about. Now, we're not talking about, I'm talking about the small businessman. I'm not talking about corporations. But so that was interesting because Arliss being a perfect example. I learned how business works and the decisions people have to make. So, I mean, but the Judaism, well, in my family, bad cooks, really bad cooks in my family. I can't eat brisket to this day. I really can't. I cannot. The only time I'll eat brisket is if I go to like the Kansas City and I go to like Arthur Bryant's or like Oklahoma Joe's or one of these great down home ribs. But I can't eat brisket. It's so terrible.
My mother's recipe. They must have had my mother's recipe.
Man. My wife's mother is Italian. See, that's the pro side. You have to say, well, she must do something, So that's. I mean, I'll tell you stories. I could not read Hebrew. I used to cut Hebrew school. I would cut Hebrew school because they would drop us off on Sundays. It was Sunday morning, and I just wasn't into it. And so I would walk in and then walk right out. And about a mile down the road was a sporting goods store and a luncheonette. And then I would eat lunch, look at the sporting goods store, walk around stuff, and then come back to be picked up. So after it comes time for my bar mitzvah, and I keep telling people, I can't read Hebrew. And they go, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll come the day. And I said, no, you don't understand. I can't read Hebrew. And you'll be fine. 3 days before the week before, the ceremony, they realized that I can't read Hebrew. And I said, I'm not lying. Here's what I want you to do. I did this 2 days before. Spell it out phonetically. BAW-RUCH A-T, Baruch Atah, do that and I'll memorize it. Oh, yeah. So that's what I did. And I went up there, and afterwards, and of course, in that you had to do, the shakedown, of course, there was you had to say you were going to go through the confirmation, which was another 2-3 years of this. And, and I said, look, this is where compromise you learn. Okay, so I'll say it. So I get through and I'm going to go through the confirmation because otherwise it wouldn't let me have the bar mitzvah. I mean, it was a real blackmail thing. And so I go through the whole thing. I'm in the receiving line. Everybody's telling me how beautifully I read Hebrew. And then the rabbi comes up to me and says, well, I'm very glad you have agreed to go on to confirmation. I said, I got to tell you, Rabbi, I am prone to lie, and that was probably the last time I was in the temple ever. I'm not a very practicing guy. I mean, but I mean, it's in my heart. I consider myself Jewish. I mean,
but by the way, now here's the truth. This is why we're all here today, Robert. We're bringing you back. We're just bringing you back.
Yeah.
Out of your heart.
By the way, my goddaughter, my goddaughter, who is basically my daughter, she left working for the New York Yankees to work for Hillel. So and it's great because she's in a much better place and she's big time. She's into UJA. She's into the whole thing. It's like my grandmother was into Hadassah. It's like so the tradition carries on in some way.
Right. I'm just telling you, we're gonna work with your goddaughter. She's spectacular young woman, by the way, and also really, really knowledgeable and passionate about sports. Arnie.
Yeah, I was going to ask before your brisket story, but I was going to ask you about gefilte fish, but I think I know the answer to that one.
Fish.
No, I got to bring you back to sports for the last couple minutes of the show here. So first of all, I think everybody, I know you're a baseball fan. Who's your team? Is it Mets, Yankees? Who's the team?
Here's my motto in life. Life is always better when the home team wins. I mean, and I don't mean this in sports. I mean, in politics, in business, in family, life is better when the home team wins. Everybody's happier, feel good at work, feel good family, So I live in Los Angeles and New York. I always grew up being a Yankee fan because when I grew up, the Mets, were just starting. So Mantle and Maris were my growing up. But I used to sell beer in the Astrodome, and I told you I was there 7 years, so I have an affinity to the Houston Astros. I live here in Los Angeles, so the Dodgers are friends of mine. I like the Angels, but my good friend is the general manager of the Seattle Mariners. I like baseball. I'm a baseball guy. I enjoy. This problem with blind loyalty to sports teams, I think, is a real problem. I do believe that. I do believe that. Here's why. Professional sports, they're monopolies. Never forget that these leagues are monopolies. You have one in every city. One, maybe in New York you have two, Los Angeles, but one store you're allowed to root for. That's it. Well, you get an asshole like Woody Johnson running the Jets. Why am I rooting for this guy's product to do well? Would you root for a store owner who was a Fabisna from hell, who you disagree with everything? Would you root for his store to do well? Because that's the thing about sports fans' loyalties. It's not a logical thing. And it's unfortunate at times because I've been as passionate as anybody, but I wonder at times if it's a healthy thing. I'm not so sure. And like I said, never forget they are monopolies. You want to start playing that league, you can't. That's why they're worth billions of dollars.
Okay, wait a second. Now, just want to let you know, we can book version 2 of this right now because Ari Ackerman is on this call. He's one of the owners of the Miami Marlins. So they are our official baseball team, just so you know. They had a fantastic season. I think this would be a great, you remember that show, Counterpoint?
Oh, I'm happy to do it, but I have to tell you, when I told you we met that comic relief, that baseball thing, that was in Miami, and I was very good friends with Wayne Heisinger.
I love Wayne.
I met you through Heisinger, I think.
I love Wayne. Wayne was a great man, but I have to ask you this question for Donna Cohen, because you love baseball. She wants to know how you feel about women having a league of their own.
I think that why baseball, this is major, you gotta remember, Major League Baseball, as much as I love it, is the whitest, most conservative sport in the world. It's an organization that is so, it's a white sport, basically. It is, it's the most conservative sport by far. And so the idea that women are not allowed to, it's Major League Baseball will not allow women to play baseball. It's in their charter. I mean, it's a horrible idea. Why can't women play baseball at the Olympics, or they're having their own league? That's absurd. But
he's all for it. I think he'll be your first investor. I would sign him up. She's a lawyer. I think sign Robert up. He's in. He's in for the league of their own.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got to meet a couple of them. Dottie's and the couple of women from the Rockford Peaches. I got to meet a few of them.
It's pretty cool, right? It's really, really cool.
Listen, the Hall of Fame is by far my favorite museum in the world. If you've never been to the Baseball Hall of Fame, it really is something. That said, this idea that it is a museum, it is not the pearly gates. I mean, the idea that we got to keep people out of the Hall of Fame. I mean, the first guy they put in was Ty Cobb. First guy. He was a wife beater, threw games for money, a Klansman, possibly killed a guy, went into the stands to beat up a heckler who was a paraplegic. An all-time awful, horrible human being, and he's the first guy they put in. So this idea.
So is this an argument for Pete Rose? Is this an argument for Pete Rose? Is that what you're?
This is an argument for, well, that's a rule, but I mean, yeah, I mean, now here's my argument. I got into this with Jim Gray, and we were on different sides of this. I said, how can Major League Baseball at this point? By the way, Pete Rose has served like a 40-year sentence already. I mean, come on. How can Major League Baseball have all this holier than thou attitudes towards gambling when every other commercial in Major League Baseball is for FanDuel or whatever, DraftKings? I mean, which are total gambling sites. I mean, the hypocrisy is a little bit out there now.
Hey, Arnie, on this upbeat turn that this conversation is taken, would you like to throw in like a great last upbeat, bring us home question here? and I'll check here for any others from our family here.
No, it's been a great show, Robert. It's really great. I'm a baseball fan. I spent many years in pro baseball, and by the way, Shahar Frank is on. I saw him on the Zoom tonight, an Israeli. Israel's going to be playing in the Olympics in baseball.
Well,
didn't
they play in the World Baseball Clash a couple of years ago and came in I think they were up to the semifinals at one point or something, or the quarterfinals.
Yeah, no, it was a great run, and we're all cheering for him and hope that the Tokyo games happen, and that would be really fun to watch Israel. But look, I'm gonna let Donna close it. I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us. You have such an interesting career, in all of these fields, and I love your passion for sports. So thank you for being on the Orander Filco Maccabi USA sports show, and hopefully we can get you back again.
That would be great. Now, before we go, Robert, I've had this. Brian has asked 3 or 4 times. Can you please call everyone a lollygagger?
Lollygaggers, they're all lollygaggers.
Yes, but yeah, you know what? In this particular case, it would probably be true. And so I don't know. Somebody keeps asking for you to talk about a young Michelle Pfeiffer. I have no idea why they're even interested.
First movie I ever did was a movie called The Hollywood Knights, which is a real cult film. And it was Michelle Pfeiffer's first film. Also, it was Tony Danza's first film. It was good talent. But Michelle, if you would if you would have told me Michelle Pfeiffer was going to be this great actress. And at that point, because, it was the old joke, because she looked like a girl, like I said, you throw a rock in Malibu, you hit 5 of them. But she was pretty. But now the part was pretty lame too, that's also. But but my God, has she done a good body of work? She was really good in the HBO version when she played Madoff's wife.
Yep,
She was really good at that.
Excellent. I actually partnered with her like a year and a half ago on a business deal that she wanted to do, and she was just fantastic. And it's very intimidating. Like, yeah, you want to stay on the business, but she walks in and she is just stunning. What can I tell you? And she doesn't look like she's trying that hard, because she just doesn't have to.
No,
but, okay. I really enjoyed spending the time. All right, listen, Robert, you're the best. Thank you for doing this with us.
Quick question: how are the twins?
Oh, they're great. Thank you. As I said, one of my sons is now a new Israeli citizen, and my other one's going to be. We're hoping he'll pick up his Grammy in a couple of years. I don't know.
How old are they now?
They're 23. Can you believe that? I know.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
I know, I can't believe it either. But it's great to see you, and we will do this again at some point.
I'm happy to. Guys up on top who put up with this, I appreciate it. Dan, Brendan, Don, Stephen, Mackenzie, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Be well.
Bye-bye.
And I don't know who you're rooting for in the Super Bowl, but are we having a Super Bowl show? I guess I don't know. Are we having a Super Bowl show? To be determined or not, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with another great guest. And we'll have Robert will be writing the opens for the show and all of our comedic routines through the end of our run. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Bye. Good work, guys.